Amanda Owen, the famous Yorkshire shepherdess, has finally talked about her life since her split from her ex-husband. She has shown how hard their relationship really was. Amanda is known for being strong and independent, and her honest story shows how hard it was to live with her ex-husband after they broke up. Find out more about the truth Amanda Owen told us and how it changes how we see her life now that she is divorced. The first few years of marriage. Amanda's relationship with her ex-husband began like any other, with hopes, dreams, and joy for the future. Everything seemed fine when they met for the first time. They had the same morals, the same sense of humor, and an undeniable chemistry that made them feel like they were supposed to be together. It seemed like they could take over the world together for a while, and nothing could stop them. It looked like they had a lot of power together. In the beginning, they had a lot of fun together, worked toward the same goals, and knew they were building something great. They were a team, Amanda would say, and they helped each other. Amanda was always the positive one. They both thought that their relationship could not be broken, and that their lives were full of possibilities. Part of the dream has always been to start a family together and live a life that makes them happy. Of course, nothing is ever really as good as it looks. It had flaws, like many relationships do, but neither of them thought they were impossible to fix at the time. At times, there were doubts, small fights, and opinions that didn't seem important at the time. They thought it was just growth pains. They seemed to be living a perfect life, as their friends and family watched them celebrate their milestones, raise their children, and reach their goals. At least from the outside, Amanda and her ex-husband Clive looked like the perfect pair. But as time went on, little cracks started to show up. The link that seemed unbreakable at first began to weaken, but no one, not even they, at first, noticed. Amanda had times when she started to feel uncomfortable. Something was different in their relationship, but she couldn't put her finger on it. Clive, who used to be very caring and attentive, began to mentally pull away. There were times when it seemed like there was no sound for a very long time. Amanda did sometimes ask for help, but it wasn't as easy to find as it used to be. At first it was so slight that she almost didn't notice it, but she knew something wasn't right. Amanda was determined to make things work despite these small signs. She cared about the relationship and wanted the life they had built together to keep going strong. She didn't want to give up. For some reason, she kept telling herself that things would get better and go back to how they were. They had been through hard times before and always got better. Though Amanda knew deep down that they couldn't keep ignoring some problems. What began as a fairy tale was slowly becoming real, and it was getting harder to be happy and satisfied. Amanda loved her family and had high dreams for their future. But she felt like something was missing, and it was getting worse. It wasn't enough to make her think about giving up yet, though. Amanda was only at the start of a journey that would test her in ways she never thought possible. So much of what she didn't know, she would learn, and she would have to face. She would have to. The stress behind the scenes. Amanda and Clive's marriage started to get worse over time. Problems that were once small and hard to see began to get worse and be seen by more people. Amanda, who is always positive, tried to play them down at first because she thought it was just a phase. They knew that no marriage was perfect and that both of them had been through hard times before. It felt different this time, though. There was a problem. Small disputes about everyday things were the first signs of stress. At first, they thought it was because of the stress of having a family and working full-time. They were both always on the go because life was busy. Amanda thought that being tired from work, the kids, and juggling everything might be making things worse. It was normal for couples to have problems during times of stress, and she thought that things would get better once the dust settled. Things didn't get better over time, though. It got harder to ignore them as they happened more often. Their home started to feel tense, even though it had been peaceful before. There were times when it was quiet. Amanda would try to talk to Clive, but the chat would end or he would respond in a distant way. She noticed that he seemed to be emotionally pulling away, not there as much as he used to be. It wasn't just the quiet either. It was the lack of love and simple acts of kindness that had once kept their relationship healthy. Amanda tried not to rush. She was used to being the strong one who could handle anything. Even though things were hard, she told herself that things would get better and that their relationship could handle it. She knew something was wrong, though, and she couldn't shake the feeling. The way Clive had changed was one of the hardest things for Amanda. She had always known she could count on him to be there for her when she needed help. But now he seemed to be busy all the time and farther away than ever. He wasn't the same man who used to make her feel safe and loved. Amanda would be wide awake at night, thinking what had happened to the link they used to have. During this time, Amanda didn't show how upset she was very often. She didn't want to sound like she was whining, and she didn't want to get them in trouble in front of everyone. In order to protect their kids and their family, she kept up a strong front. She tried to hide how upset and confused she was, hoping things would get better. It was hard for a lot of couples, she thought. Maybe this was just one of those times when they would need to work harder to get back on track. Yet Amanda quickly came to understand that this wasn't a short-term problem. It couldn't be fixed by having a few heart-to-heart talks or taking a weekend trip. Every day seemed to make the gap between her and Clive bigger. That wasn't the only thing that was different. There was also a real distance. They didn't spend as much time together, and when they did, it often felt forced and strange. The easy friendship they used to have seemed like a long time ago. The situation Amanda was in was not easy. The gap between them was getting bigger, and she couldn't ignore it. She didn't want to face the truth, though. They couldn't stand the thought of their marriage falling apart. She hid how she felt and focused on the day-to-day tasks of raising their kids and keeping up the public picture of a happy family. For the cameras, she kept smiling, putting on a united front for the world, even though she felt like she was slowly falling apart inside. When everything fell apart, it was one of those times when you know something can't be fixed. Amanda and Clive had been getting more and more angry with each other for a while now. Both of them had tried to hide it, but now there was no way around it. The connection could no longer last. Amanda felt a sudden, sharp realization that she couldn't avoid. It was like a punch in the gut. It wasn't a special event or argument that made things change. Instead, it was the buildup of so many small moments, the slow loss of trust and relationship. They were no longer close and couldn't get back together. Neither of them seemed ready or able to put in the work to rebuild what had once been a strong base. The love that had brought them together in the beginning seemed like a faraway memory. Instead, anger and tiredness had taken its place. Amanda tried to remember when things began to go badly. Was it when Clive stopped being interested in her daily life, or when they stopped sharing the little things that used to make them happy together? She wasn't sure, but she thought they had lost their way somewhere along the way. When the two people were together, they were like strangers even though they lived together. It wasn't the fights or the quiet treatments that were hardest for Amanda. It was the lack of emotional bond. It made her feel like the person she lived with didn't see her or care about her wants or needs. They had turned into two people who just lived together and went through the motions, not really connecting or being close. The love they used to have for each other had turned cold and distant, and neither of them seemed able to bring it back. Amanda knew at this point she couldn't keep up the act. Things were making her feel and think badly because of how heavy the situation was. She did everything she could to make things better, but nothing worked. Their anger seemed to be stuck in a never-ending loop, with no way out. Amanda sat in their living room one night and stared out the window. It had been a long day of silence and missed chances to connect with each other. She could not live like this any longer. This wasn't good enough for her. There should have been someone in her life who loved, encouraged, and saw her. Not someone who had mentally checked out and was just going through the motions. Even though it wasn't easy, the choice was becoming more clear every day. Amanda knew that staying in this situation would make her feel worse. She was already mentally worn out, and it was clear that it was hurting her mental health. She had tried to be the strong one, to keep the relationship together and carry its weight. But now she knew that being strong didn't mean staying in a bad position for both of them. Right then and there, Amanda made her choice. No matter how painful it was, she had to face the truth. The couple was no longer married. What was broken couldn't be fixed. Once loved each other, they no longer did. The respect and understanding that had held them together were gone. It was time to let go. It was easy to see why both groups were angry and sad. Clive was certainly shocked. There were a lot of feelings and regret in the talk. Amanda never thought that their marriage would end this way. She had hoped to build a life with him and grow old with him, but life had other ideas. After the split, all she could do was face the truth about her life. While Amanda and Clive Owen were married, many people thought that their time together on the farm would come to an end. After all, they had been married for 22 years. It seemed impossible that they would still work together at Raven Seat, their favorite farm in Yorkshire. Even though Amanda and Clive were no longer together, they were still very close to the land, their kids, and the life they had made together. They continued to work together, which was a surprise. Even though they didn't want to, they knew they had to make the hard choice to keep farming together for the sake of their family. Even after they were no longer married, living together and running a business together was very hard on their emotions, but they put aside their differences to do what was best for everyone. People who were following their story could tell that they were emotionally apart, but the day-to-day operations at Raven's Seat didn't change much. To take care of the animals, run the farm, and make sure everything kept running easily for their 9 children, they continued to work together on the farm. Their link to the land and to each other was much stronger than any problems they had had in the past with each other. Amanda chose to stay on the farm and keep working with Clive for more reasons than just making sure the kids had a safe life. With a shared past that wouldn't be easy to erase after a divorce, they felt a duty to the land they had worked so hard to improve. Their new relationship wasn't like the ones they were used to, and they both had to be careful as they learned to handle it. Of course, there were times when things got tense as they tried to balance their personal and work lives. But they also respected each other in a new way because they understood each other and loved their children and the farm the same way they did, and Clive started to make a schedule that worked for the way they were working together now. The two of them no longer shared a bed, but they still had the same hopes for Raven Seat and their future there. The farm wasn't just a way to make money. It was a family tradition that meant a lot to both of them. Even with everything that had happened, that link was still too strong to break. People from the outside may have thought this situation was strange or even uncomfortable, but Amanda and Clive had to get used to it. These two people were no longer married, but they were still very much partners. They worked together, had children together, and took care of the land together. Even though it wasn't the same as the one they used to have, that link was still very strong. Even though things had to change, their shared dedication to the farm became the foundation of how they worked together from then on. But a bigger project was coming up that would bring them together even more. Uncle John's, a nearby stone barn, that had been a part of the farm's past for a long time, was being fixed up. They would have to focus, work together, and use all of their energy to complete this huge job. It would also test their teamwork skills in new ways. As the new project went on, Amanda and Clive both realized that this sudden change in their lives was giving them a chance to get back together, not just as employees, but as business partners with the same goals for the future. Their love for their children and the land they had built together meant that their journey wasn't over, even though they had been through hard times personally and emotionally. Amanda tells everyone the truth at last. Many people thought they made the sensible choice to keep working together on the farm after they got divorced. They didn't want to give up their heritage, their 9 children, or their farm. As soon as shooting for the docu-series started, though, it became clear that their deal was much less simple than it seemed. Their anger, which had been private before, was now being seen by everyone. Following everything they had been through, living and working with Clive was turning out to be harder than she thought. Their lives after the split were shown in the documentary, which also showed something Amanda had to hide to protect the farm and their kids. How hard it was on her to work so closely with someone she used to love, but now found it hard to be around. She finally told the truth about living with her ex-husband after the split. It was the last drop. "It's not good. I had to keep this from you. People thought that things would be fine if we just kept going as usual. It hasn't been easy, though. After everything that's happened, it's really tough to work with Clive." Although they agreed to work together to help the farm and their kids, things were not at all what they seemed. The emotional baggage from their marriage, living in each other's shadows for years, and the pain from their breakup were still there. Amanda was not gullible. She knew it would be hard. But what she wasn't ready for was how much those old feelings, hurts, frustrations, and unsolved problems would come up again when they had to work together every day on the farm. Making the documentary series only made things worse. Amanda felt like she couldn't fully describe how hard it was to be around Clive and work with him, as if nothing had changed, because cameras were watching them all the time. It was hard to forget all the bad things that had happened because of the farm, which had once been a shared dream. The reality show was meant to be a fresh start, a way to show the world how they were co-parenting and farming together again. Amanda had been going through a lot of pain in quiet for a long time, and this made it worse. Amanda was having a hard time with more than just working with Clive. It was about figuring out how to deal with a personal past that wasn't so simple to erase. It was planned that the farm would help them heal and be able to stay together as a family after their marriage ended. But Amanda often felt like she was walking on eggshells because she had to keep the farm's strict routine while also trying to keep the tension between them in check. There were times when the cameras got glimpses of them interacting in an awkward way. She tried to be strong, though, and kept her mind on the bigger picture: her kids, the farm, and the legacy they had built. She was determined that their personal problems would not get in the way of their work. But it wasn't always easy to hide how painful it was to work with someone who used to be her best friend. What will happen next? Amanda was always going to find it hard to live and work with Clive. However, as the months went by, she understood how hard it was to keep the delicate balance between work and her own feelings. Amanda was constantly at odds with herself because their kids relied on them, and the farm was always needing work. The stress of their job relationship couldn't hurt the kids or the farm, she had to make sure. It was getting harder and harder to keep up the front, though. Amanda started to realize how hard it was on her as time went on. It wasn't just an annoyance that she and Clive were still tense. It was making her feel and think less well. Amanda had always seen the farm as a safe haven and a place to focus her energy on something real. The truth had come out, but Amanda hadn't thought about how it would affect her. Things in her life were falling apart in ways she hadn't expected after the divorce. It looked like her world was slowly taking shape again. The things she had been keeping secret were now open to everyone, but it wasn't clear how to move forward anymore. After many years of marriage, Amanda's secret was finally revealed, setting off a blaze of shock and anger. Realizing that she had been living in constant denial to protect herself and her family was what broke her. The mental toll was also very hard on her. Once, she had put all of her trust in Clive, but now she had to be very careful around him. Things went wrong for Amanda in a number of ways. On the one hand, how her close friends and family reacted right away. People felt sorry for them, but they also judged them. A lot of people had thoughts about her choice to hide some things about her marriage. There were people who thought she should have been more honest, and that by hiding her problems, she had let them get out of hand. People helped her because they knew it wasn't easy to accept fault or weakness, especially when it was about something as private as a marriage. But it wasn't just the people close to her who were sad. It was also the kids. Amanda had always put their health and happiness first, and she knew that telling them the truth about what happened between her and Clive would have an effect on them in the long run. She had done everything she could to keep them from seeing how bad their breakup really was. But now there were more things to talk about and more questions to answer. She did everything she could to keep the kids from being affected by the fight, but she knew they were old enough to know that something had changed between their parents. In the quiet times, like after the animals were fed and the younger kids were in bed, Amanda would think about the decisions she had made. That she would keep working with Clive because it was the best thing for the farm and the family. While being sensible was helpful, it didn't make the emotional weight go away. Every time she talked to Clive, whether it was about the farm's needs or setting up child care, it made her think of the life they had built together before it all fell apart. Do you like Amanda or Clive? Share your thoughts below.